right now I'm preparing for an exhibition in China where we are presenting a work titled Voice of Sisyphus, which was created in 2011. In 2017, we redid it to increase the resolution. And for the ZKM, it was in an exhibition at the ZKM called Datum Soria. And we came across some unexpected challenges, which was that the Apple operating system had introduced certain new limits that the early software wasn't prepared to handle. So, there's an example of where a work of art produced at a certain time for a certain digital environment has to kind of be reformatted in certain ways for later. Now, today, there's certain ways to get around that because we're doing a third version right now in my lab. And this is going to be, whereas the previous one was in open frameworks and processing, the new one is going to be a Python-based standalone software. So yeah, so that's an interesting question. How do you preserve a work later? Do you get the work to function in the way it was previously functioning, or do you describe the work? Do you document the work in a way that it talks about how it used to exist? And I don't really have an answer. A lot of that has to do with preservation strategies that have yet to be conventionalized, across the institutions. So there's no real direct answer. Like my early 1992 works, I don't think we can present them today because, for instance, the resolution is so small. The screen size was 640 by 480, and in today's system we could try to expand the scale, but then it would be very pixelated, and it was done in software that do not exist tomorrow. I mean today. Any of the works that were created at the early stage of digital media, there were always a conversation with what was possible. In other words, what did the system allow? What, in terms of what kind of speed, complexity, things like that. And at the time, one was just happy enough to manage to complete the work. When it was time to present the work again, at that time we realized that one had to make much more precise documentation than just have a screenshot and a verbal description. So there's something called a technical writer, which goes into detail of how to assemble a particular work once it goes onwards in time. I have a project in Seattle at the public library that collects data from the library itself by the hour.
Mhm.
And when we did this project in 2005 with um, an engineer artist named Rama Herzlein, who was my student at the time. Today he's a professor. And basically Rama did an amazing job of documenting. So there's an 87-page description of how the software works in case we need to reconstruct it on new technologies. Right. So most of my work has been on the screen, and it's been interactive. And so I've never really needed any special kind of equipment. Um, Having said that, that's not really true. We did have an artwork named Tracing, where in 1997, where we used some sensors by which we surrounded the space with sensors so that we knew exactly where the public was standing, and their placement determined, what would happen on the screen. So yeah, so if we were to present that work again, the we don't have those sensors anymore. I come from photography, and in 1986 was the first time that I could create images that had somewhat photographic resolution. And I should say that actually I learned computing 5 years before in the studio of a painter named Harold Cohen, who was running a software that would paint like him. And so that model of having the computer be a collaborator in the image making process was always present for me right from the beginning. But in 1986, I came across an equation for creating an image using frequency modulation. And for a long time, I didn't know what to do with this. I wasn't able to imagine how to integrate that into the art conversation. But over time, I would do projects with that. Eventually, I did a installation, like a 2D flat, large scale image for a subway station in Los Angeles. And then more recently, during COVID, I started to go back to those early algorithms and coding to, as a way to create works that didn't require a large team. And then we meaning my lab at the university, we were looking at all of the machine learning image generation softwares like generative adversarial networks and other kinds of softwares like that, by which images could be created from other images. And then 9 months ago, out came diffusion models, generative artificial intelligence, image synthesis software, which all of a sudden made it super easy to make an image. So in that case, all you do is you introduce either a text prompt and an image prompt, and it's very controversial. Yesterday, we had a speaker at the university who said it challenges the artist, meaning it's replacing the artist. But in my case, I consider it to be an actual asset. I consider it to be a collaborator of sorts. Whatever I'm producing with these works, the new works, what remains is the image. The software doesn't matter. In the previous works that I was doing, where we wrote the software, or I wrote the software, then the artwork was actually the software itself, and the image was a evidence of how the software worked. So that's a kind of different way to think about how
Mhm.
these software operate.